analysis and job evaluation. So this is the first topic for industrial organizational psychology. Job analysis is very important because it is considered as the starting point of anything that we do in an organization, in a company where we can work as HR personnel or HR managers in the near future. So when we talk about job analysis, as the name implies, analysis of the job, how will you analyze a particular job in a company? It's through gathering of information, analysis, structuring of information regarding to that particular job. So when we talk about job analysis, what an HR personnel is doing is that, of course, gathering of information. What kind of information does an HR personnel get from other people or from reliable sources? So the components of the job, the characteristics of the job, and the requirements. Job analysis is also considered the heart of IO psychology because, like what I've said, it is the starting point of any tasks in the industrial organizational psychology or the human resource. So when we talk about job analysis, it will give us job description. It can be a basis for our training programs for our employees, for the selection of employees, and for properly evaluating the employees in a company. So therefore, job analysis is the center of almost all of the facets of human resource or IO psychology. These are importance of job analysis. First, it produces a job description which will be further discussed later as this is different with job specification. Ano ba ang pagkakaiba nilang dalawa? It also helps to determine the KSAO. When we talk about KSAO, it's the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics required for employee selection. Of course, when you apply for a particular job, an applicant wanted to be part of the company, wanted to be selected, and merong mga kailangang characteristics so that that employee or that applicant would fit in that particular job. It also yields list of tasks that can be targeted for training programs since it is a initial thing that we can do if we wish to facilitate a training. Saan ba mahina yung ating mga employees? This is the job and then this is the requirement for that particular job. Hindi nagagawa ng empleyado yung required tasks and responsibilities na nakapaloob doon sa trabaho. Ano kayang pwede kong ibigay bilang HR personnel doon sa tao na yon? Another is to determine worker mobility. What do you mean by worker mobility? Mobility means the movement from, let's say, from one part of an organization to another part of the organization. Ito bang tao na to kapag hinar ko through the job analysis, through the thorough processing of information about a particular job. Pag ba ito hinar ko tong tao na to, may chance ba na itong taong to ay madala ko sa ibang part ng company? Let's say, for example, the person is assigned on sales. And then soon, meron ba siyang chance to become a supervisor or to work on a different setup in a company? Ito bang empleyado na to is something or someone who can contribute much to the company? And aside from that, job analysis is used to avoid Peter Principle, the issue of Peter Principle. What do you mean by Peter Principle? Peter Principle, it is actually an issue wherein an organization, let's say, promotes an employee to the higher level. However, that employee or personnel is incompetent of that particular task or that particular level of promotion. Let's say, for example, you saw an employee very competent siya in terms of sales, in terms of his or her job, sales. Ang dami niyang nabebenta, ang dami niyang napapasok na benta sa company, let's say, marketing yung company. Pero the question is, if this employee will be promoted to a higher level, a higher status, let's say supervisor, same pa rin ba yung characteristics ng being a salesperson to a supervisor? Peter principle happens when pinromote ko tong empleyado na to, na salesperson dati, naging siyang supervisor, pero nung naging supervisor siya, it seems like the person is incompetent. Why? Because the characteristics of a salesperson required for a salesperson is different with the characteristics required for a supervisor. So minsan, gusto nating i-promote yung ating mga empleyado sa company without considering, will it take time? Will I give the person more time to flourish, more time to develop, more time to progress doon sa kanyang mga kailangang i-develop sa sarili niya bago siya ma-promote. So yung Peter Principle, para bang ang bilis mong na-promote yung tao, yun pala hindi pa handa. Yun pala yung tao ay hindi pa competent enough para dun sa position na yon. So nagiging incompetent, and then nagkakaroon tuloy ng problema in terms of going out of the company, the commitment in the company. So this one can be avoided with job analysis. If we know what is this job all about, the characteristics of a job, and how can I promote a person who has this particular job. Another is construction of a performance appraisal instrument. Performance appraisal or management, of course, in every actions, there should be evaluation. If an employee is performing something on a company, the task of an HR personnel or a manager or a supervisor is to evaluate the tasks. And how can we know that our tool is appropriate for that evaluation? It's through the job analysis. And then to ensure job relatedness. Yun bang trabaho na binibigay natin doon sa ating mga empleyado ay magkakatugma, or necessary in that particular position or particular job. So indeed, job analysis is very important because almost all the activities that as an HR personnel must do ay umiikot doon sa maganda at mahusay na job analysis. One of the products of job analysis is job description. It is a written product of job analysis. When we talk about job description, it is a summary of the job, and usually it is 2 to 5 pages in length. These are the 8 sections of a typical job description. What do I mean by a typical job description? Because each company has the prerogative to have a certain format for job description. Pero the actual format for a job description ay ito, typical. Ito yung 8 sections na content ng job description. We have the job title, brief summary, work activities, tools and equipment used, work context, performance standards, compensation information, and job competencies. When we talk about job title, as the name implies, it's the title of the job. It is the most accurate thing that will describe that particular job. Its power, the status level, the competencies needed to perform the job, and it actually helps an employee what will he or she expects on a particular job. Dapat pag gumawa ng job description, sa title pa lang, alam mo na kung ano yung gagawin. What's the expected tasks or output of an applicant kung siya man ay magiging employee of a company. It also provides workers the form of identity in a company. Of course, pag ang title mo is, let's say, secretary, that's your identity. You're a secretary. And by having secretary, lagyan mo pa ng executive secretary, much more na accurate ano ba yung tasks relative sa isang executive secretary compare with, let's say, a simple managers, or not managers, but department secretary. The job titles also can affect the perceptions of the status and worth of a job. So we have to be very cautious in terms of giving description on a particular title. Let's say, yung kanina kong example, a department secretary is different with an executive secretary. So you can easily look at the status of the job, the job itself by just hearing the title. Executive secretary, parang ang sosyal, parang ang gandang pakinggan, hindi ba? Ang department secretary, maganda rin naman pakinggan, pero you know that there are limits when we call a person as department secretary compare with an executive secretary. For the brief summary, as another part of the job description, this needs to be a paragraph and briefly describing the nature and purpose of the job. This is used in help wanted advertisements, internal postings, and company brochures. So most likely 2 to 3 sentences that will describe the job, let's say, that is vacant in a company, or what the job is all about and what is that job for. Work activities, this has something to do with the tasks and activities that the worker or the employee should work on once that he or she is accepted in that particular job. So this task should be organized into meaningful categories to make the job description easy to read and understand. Let's say, for example, in the work activities, does it require physical activities, mental activities, or other activities, and you label them, ito yung task na kailangan gawin, more of physical activities, more of cognitive activities yung gagawin ng isang empleyado. And then tools and equipment used, of course, an employee cannot work on without tools, without appropriate equipment. So in the job description pa lang, nakalagay na ano ba yung ine-expect ng isang empleyado na gagamitin niya para ma-perform yung kanyang work and responsibilities. Information in this section is used primarily for employee selection and training. Of course, during the recruitment, nakaspecify na agad. Ito yung mga gamit na kailangang alam mong gamitin bilang isang empleyado. And if ever that there is an applicant, very good, trainable naman siya, there could be a training for the person para matuto siya na gamitin yung mga tools and equipment na yon na nakaspecify doon sa job description. So pwede kasing alam niya na, no? Depende kasi sa isang sa recruiter kung tatanggapin niya yung isang empleyado na alam na kung ano yung mga tools and equipment para doon sa trabaho na yon, or it can be for training. Pwede namang pag-aralan, pwede pa rin tanggapin kahit hindi marunong, for as long as manageable or for as long as trainable yung empleyado. So the tools and equipment use is also part of the job description. Another is job context. It is the environment in which the employee works. So you have to mention on the job description the stress level, if there are stresses, stressors that can be experienced by the employee. Of course, the work schedule. Meron bang night shift, graveyard shift, or morning lang yung schedule, physical demands, levels of responsibility. Meron kasing mga positions na hindi magpa-function yung mga susunod na positions kung hindi tapos nung isang, let's say, position connected to the other. So, kailangan matapos niya muna yung gagawin niya, let's say ako, bago magawa nung susunod sa akin yung mga trabaho. So, you know, the levels of responsibility, temperature, number of coworkers, degree of danger, etc. should be included in the job description. Very dangerous yung trabaho. Naglilinis ng salamin. So, dapat nakalagay pa lang doon, that your life is at stake, but with due training naman, and at the same time, proper safety measures, tools, and equipment for you to be able to function properly on your job. It is important in providing applicants with disabilities with information they can use to determine their ability to perform a job under a particular set of circumstances. So those persons with disabilities should be enlightened with your job description na they have limitations in terms of their job, in terms of their tasks. However, even if they have limitations, they can still perform the job that is the tasks required of the job. How? So nakalagay yon doon sa ating job description. Another is the work performance. It is the brief description of how an employee's performance is evaluated. Like what I've said, it's not just about work. Kayo nga mga estudyante, kapag nagpasa kayo ng mga activities, kanina sabi ninyo, ang daming activities, nakakasabay naman, ini-evaluate. Hindi pwedeng gawa lang ng gawa. Si teacher or si professor should be there to evaluate the work. It is the same with the company or the organization. When you work, it's not just about salary. It's not just about the benefits that you can get from work, but you are going to be evaluated for your performance. What are the expectations to you as an employee? You will be evaluated. How? Nakalagay yon doon sa job description. And then compensation information, of course, for practical reason, it's good that it would be better to include the compensation information on the job description. Kasi kaya naman nag-a-apply ng trabaho ang isang tao ay para kumita for salary, right? So this section contains the salary grade, what are the things being compensated for, compensable factors, paano ka binabayaran doon sa yung trabaho. Salary grade is a cluster of job of similar worth. So meron tayong mga salary grades levels, kumbaga. Salary grade 17, ito yung rate mo. Salary grade 18, ito yung rate mo. Of course, the salary grade depends on your status or rank in the company. The employee's actual salary or salary range should not be listed on the job description because it may hinder an applicant to apply for a job. Pag nakalagay na, especially yung actual na figure, let's say for example, ang salary is 15,000. So usually ang nilalagay lang natin sa description ay yung salary grades para hindi naman masyadong very open, kumbaga yung salary with the applicant. And then once that the applicant became part of the company, here goes the actual salary. Makikita yun doon sa contract or to a document stating ito yung salary mo, expected salary mo in that particular job. It's not listed. The actual salary, it's not listed because it will hinder, it may affect an applicant to join the company. Kasi yung expectations niya ay ang baba naman ng sweldo or ay ang taas ng sweldo. So the expectations over my task could be high also. Okay, job competencies, it is also known as job specifications. Kung ang job description, it's more of the parang totality of the job, the duties, the tasks, the responsibilities. Ang specifications naman, it has something to do with the necessary characteristics of the person who will perform the job. So the KSAO, knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics. But we have to take note that the competencies, these are competencies, should be divided into two sections. So the first should be the competencies or the characteristics that the employee or the applicant has already during the time of hiring. So nung siya ay dumaan sa recruitment and selection, meron na siyang characteristics na yon, di ba? Pag nakakakita tayo ng mga postings na nakalagay doon with pleasant personality, willing to work beyond hours, willing to be trained, knowledgeable in Microsoft Word, Excel, etc. From the time na na-hire siya, meron na siya noon. So, yun yung kanya mga competencies. But, we could not erase the fact na meron din naman mga competencies na pwedeng mapag-aralan as he or she has been hired in the company. So, yung job competencies, dapat dalawa yung content niya. First, yung innate na characteristics ng tao. Second, ay kung ano yung pwede niyang ma-obtained when he or she becomes part of the company. Okay? So the first set is of course used for selection and the other set is for training purposes. So this is the job, this is the required characteristics of a person who will handle the job. Hindi pa niya napoposes tong competencies na to. So I, being an HR personnel or staff, would suggest a training for that, to have, or for that person to have the competencies needed for the job. Another, the process of job analysis. There are 3 basic process: preparing, conducting, and evaluation of the job analysis methods. When we talk about preparing job analysis, there are questions that we need to answer. First, who will conduct the job analysis? So typically, ang naggagawa ng job analysis, of course, ay trained person, trained individual in the human resource department, but you can also hire consultants. Aside from the incumbents, aside from the supervisors, you may also hire consultants to perform job analysis. Ang consultants ay good because you may avoid the biases in determining particular characteristics and tasks relative to job analysis, to job. Kaya lang masyadong mahal. Mahal ang mga mag-hire ng isang consultant for job analysis. Kasi consultant, of course, we are expecting they are well-trained, they have extensive experience to it, and ayun, you have to pay. Compare with within yung tao na gagawa ng job analysis, edi pwedeng isama mo na siya sa sweldo niya, sa actual sweldo niya bilang, let's say, supervisor. Kasi supervisor ka naman, so it's part of your job. Unlike consultant, they have, different sets of grades and competencies na kailangan mong bayaran. Ang interesting alternative dito is the use of college interns, let's say students from IO psychology programs or any related course, kasi kapag sila yung ginamit ay less expensive, and then being, let's say as supervisor ka halimbawa, matuturuan mo pa yung mga bata how to properly do job analysis. Kung titingnan natin, yung job analysis parang ang dali. Ang dali pag sinabi mong job analysis. I-analyze ko yung job kung gagawa ba ako or mag-o-offer ako ng isang job na ganito sa company, or ito yung isang trabaho, ano yung ine-expect dun sa trabaho na yon. Pero if we perform it in real life setting, mahirap siya. And it will take time. Kasi ang hirap naman din mag-analyze ng isang bagay. At ito, isang trabaho na nakadepende yung isang tao o ang isang empleyado sa isang company. Another, how often should a job description be updated? Since it's a written output, yung job description, kailangan ba lagi tayo nagbabago ng job description? Of course not. Job description is changed if the job included change significantly. Pero mostly, dahil nga costly yung pagkakandak ng job analysis, hindi tayo malimit nag-a-update ng job description or gumagawa nito. Kasi it will take time, efforts, and money. An interesting reason for a change on job description is job crafting. in a company, an employee has the right either to uh, modify certain part of his or her duties for as long as that modification will not affect the job, will not affect the goals that has been set by the company or the goals that the company aims to meet or acquired. So meron tayong tinatawag na job crafting. It is a process in which employees unofficially change their duties to better fit their interest and skills. So quietly, pwede mong baguhin yung mga bagay na nakalagay sa iyong job description. But usually, this is performed by employees who are already veterans of a company. Of course, pag nagsisimula ka pa lang, you have to abide with the job, the task that you have to perform in the company. Pag veteran ka na kasi or medyo matagal ka na doon sa company, pwede ka na somehow quietly to modify some things on your job. Let's say for example, psychometrician and psychologist. Isa kang psychometrician. We know that the role of the psychometrician, let's say in a company, is to administer, score, and interpret psychological tests. However, a psychometrician cannot give a report without the signature, without the approval of the psychologist. Diba? Yun yung major difference. Pag psychometrician, may limits yung kailangan, yung kaya mong gawin. Ang psychologist lagi yung kapartner niya in order to finish his or her work. Pero since you, let's say, become part of the company for a long period, pwede ka nang mag-job crafting. Alam mo na ang iyong trabaho is just administering, scoring, and interpretation of tests, but hindi kasama sa iyong description, sa job description mo, yung pagta-type, let's say for example, ng test, kasi usually sa company, iba pa yung gumagawa nung mismong report. Meron pang clerk, meron pang secretary na nagta-type. O kaya naman ay after the use of the psychological tests, meron pang ibang part ng company na nag-aayos, naglilinis ng mga tests. But as you go over with your task as a psychometrician, na-realize mo, pwede mo rin naman siyang gawin. So merong job crafting na mangyayari na you will no longer look for other people to perform those tasks, but since you know that it may not be part of your responsibility in the company but can help you to do your other tasks, ikaw na yung nag-aayos ng mga test materials, ikaw na yung nag-aayos ng mga ginamit ng mga employees or ng mga kumuha ng mga tests. Another example, sa pagbili ng psychological tests, kailangan psychologist ang bumili. Psychometrician cannot buy. The psychometrician can buy, can purchase, but again, with the supervision, with the approval of the psychologist. So, alam mo yon, being psychometrician, that's one of your limitations. But since ikaw naman yung nag-administer ng mga tests sa empleyado, nalaman mo na ito yung mga kailangan kong tests. Ito yung mga kailangan kong ibigay doon sa mga employee. As a psychometrician exposed to that thing, nilist mo na ngayon kung ano yung mga kailangang bilhin, kailangang i-purchase. It's not part of your job. However, since you believe that it can be added as part of your job, you added and you perform that particular duty. So, nag-list ka na ng tests na kailangan, binigay mo kay psychologist. Ayan. And then you may also remove tasks that that you don't want to perform. Let's say, ayaw mong magtimpla ng kape. Diba sa simula, nagtitimpla ng kape or meron kang favors na binibigay sa boss mo. Pero sooner or later, since you become engaged with the company, pwede na yung tanggalin. Kasi you believe that it's not something that can add to your job or cannot, parang hindi naman ganon kalaki yung bearing niya doon sa iyong trabaho o pag-meet ng goals ng company. Which employees should participate in the job analysis? Of course, everyone should participate, especially if it's a small company or organization. But for larger organizations, it's not advisable to include all the employees. Aside sa matrabaho siya, magastos siya because you will set for an interview. Later, we will discuss the different methods of job analysis, yung mga questionnaires na pwedeng gamitin for job analysis. Kapag lahat i-include mo sa isang large company, mauubos ng oras. Meron ding schedule for the job analysis. So for larger organizations, job analysts should keep interviewing incumbents until they do not hear anything new or the author's advice. Parang sa research, qualitative research, hindi ka titigil sa pag-i-interview hanggat meron ka pang nakikuha na new information doon sa iyong participant. So parang ganito din yon, job analysis. Mag-i-interview ka ng mga nakaupo na doon sa pwesto, mga supervisors or yung mga people involved with the job, and then you keep on interviewing them kasi hindi naman lahat ay mai-interview mo. Pero you have to make sure na matatapos mo yung interview once na wala na silang masabi sa'yo na bago na pwede mong ilagay doon sa yung report. It is not also advisable to use all employees for job analysis, but instead use representative sample of the population. But make sure the representative sample will provide you enough data that you need to really come up with a good job analysis. Another, what types of information should be obtained? So the issue of level of specificity. Should the job analysis break or job down into very minute? Ano yung mga specific behaviors na kailangan ng trabaho? Or paano mo ba kukunin yung mga information? Is it from general to specific or specific to general? For jobs that involves intricate and extensive work, the job analysis is more effective at a detailed level. Let's say, for example, you are trying to analyze a particular job. Let's say, manager. So, very complicated yung role niya sa isang company. So, dapat very detailed yung iyong pag-a-analyze. Very specific ka with the things required in that particular job. Another issue of formal and informal requirements. Ano ba itong mga example? Example of formal requirements. Formal requirements for an executive assistant, typing emails, filing memos. Ang informal, di pwedeng marunong magtimpla ng kape, marunong sundo ng anak ng boss. So actually, hindi naman natin maiiwasan kasi na merong mga responsibilities na kasama pero hindi naman talaga yun yung trabaho, hindi ba? It has something to do with relationship kasi eh. Of course, when you become part of the company, it's not just about you finish the job. Of course, you are also somehow, in one way or another, establish relationship with your boss or with your colleagues. When I say relationship, it's not the intimate relationship, but at least a colleague, a partnership, a friendship that you build with them. So kung merong mga formal requirements, yun talaga yung mga kailangan mong alam para dun sa trabaho na yon. Meron din naman mga informal requirements na dahil ikaw ay executive assistant, let's say, di minsan mapapagtimpla ka ng kape at mapapagsundo ka ng anak ng boss mo. It's part of the job. Including the informal requirements in the job description will help an applicant decide whether or not he or she will accept the job. So maganda rin na we tend to be honest with our prospect employee. Alam nila no na aside doon sa trabaho nila, they have to work beyond hours. Let's say yung mga faculty members natin. So simula pa lang sa promotion nung na-hire sila, sinabi na expect that you are going to work beyond hours, 24/7, pwede kasi students ang hawak, or pwede ring sabihin na expect that you are going to work during weekends. Hindi naman lagi, pero expect that there are times that you can work during weekends. So, formal and informal requirements. Next, aside from preparing a job analysis, the next thing to do is to conduct job analysis. Yun pala yung mga bagay na kailangan mong i-prepare prior to the conduct of job analysis. But before I proceed to this, can I see the raising of hands if you are still with me and listening to my discussion? Can I see the raising of hands? Tingnan ko nga. Kung may mga nagre-raise pa ng hands, ayan. Okay. So I'm going to go back with this one. Okay. So conducting a job analysis, there are 5 steps. Identify the tasks performed, write the task statements, rate task statements, determine essential KSAO. So dapat alam nyo yun, ano? Knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics. And then selecting tests to top KSAOs. First step, identify the task performed. So in here, you have to gather existing information from current job descriptions, task inventories, and training manuals. So typically, this has been performed by the experts. Job analysis interview with the subject matter experts o yung tinatawag nating SME. So dito sa identify task performed, as the name implies, the step implies, we gather information about the task. I-identify na natin kung ano yung trabaho at paano magagawa yung trabaho na yon. So the experts may conduct job analysis interview. Iba ito doon sa selection interview or yung interview during hiring. Kasi ang main responsibility sa job analysis interview is to know information about the job itself. Compare with selection interview na ang iyong kinukuhang information ay tungkol dun sa tao na nag-a-apply. Okay, magkaiba. Selection interview, the information that you try to get ay yung tungkol dun sa taong nag-a-apply. Pag job analysis interview, you are conducting an interview to certain people, but the questions evolve on the job itself. There is also what we call a Merman technique. It is an excellent job analysis interview wherein a group of job experts o yung SME, subject matter experts, identifies the objectives and standards to be met by the ideal worker. So parang meron ng nakapicture. Ito yung trabaho. Ano ba yung ideal na picture ng tao na mag-handle ng trabaho na to? And then out of that, since meron ng ideal worker nasa sa isip with the required characteristics, doon papasok yung mga tanong. Doon magpapasok yung mga questions on the interview na ibabato mo doon sa mga concerned na tao. Another, as part of identifying the task performed, observe job incumbent. The advantage of this is it lets the job analyst see the worker do the job. And then, of course, makakakuha ka ng information. Aside from the interview, dito, ma-observe mo kung anong ginagawa talaga ng tao, ano yung mga required na kailangan gawin kapag ganito yung trabaho o ganito yung binigay na trabaho doon sa isang tao na maaaring hindi niya nabanggit during the interview. Kasi during the interview, there are things na hindi nababanggit or cautious kasi yung ini-interview, yung may hawak ng posisyon na yon. So, hindi niya nababanggit yung ibang bagay na maaaring importante sa isang job analyst to really analyze a particular job. Ang disadvantage nito, it is very obtrusive and yung Hawthorne effect or observer effect. Di ba kapag ino-observe tayo, ang tendency natin is to just show the positive things. The context of being observed, the obtrusive nga na thing. Pag ikaw ay ino-observe, naging cautious ka with what you are performing, with what you're doing, kasi alam mong ino-observe ka. Compare with hindi mo alam na ino-observe ka, doon papasok yung job participation na yung job analyst may act as if part of the company and experience the tasks required for that particular job para siya mismo makakuha ng first-hand information. Ganito pala yung mga kailangang gawin. Ito pala yung mga expectations of the job that I am analyzing at the moment. Ayun. Next step, write the task statements. Once the tasks have been identified, the next step is to write the task statements that will be used in the task inventory included in the job description. When we talk about task inventory, it contains all the list of tasks which the job incumbent rates on a series of scales such as importance and time spent. Later, meron ata ako ditong sample. Ito yung mga responsibilities. First, mag-file. First, filing of psychological tests, scoring and interpretation, administration, scoring, interpretation. Nakalagay doon yung mga tasks mo, let's say, as a psychometrician, and then nire-rate mo siya, ano ba dito yung pinaka-importante kong trabaho? Pag sinabi bang pag sinabi bang psychometrician, ano yung talagang trabaho ko? Ano ba talaga yung pinaka-importante kong trabaho na lagi kong ginagawa? Ilang araw ko yung ginagawa, time spent, etc. Let's say, teacher. Ang teacher, hindi lang yan instruction, hindi lang pagtuturo. Meron din siyang research, meron din siyang extension, meron din siyang production. So, ililist kung teacher, ang being a teacher, ang teaching ang job, let's say, na ina-analyze, nakalist. Pero syempre, ang pinaka-importante is instruction, magturo. Kasi teacher. So, time spent on that, syempre, kapag may schedule, almost every day, nagtuturo ka. Pero yung iba, important din as part of being a teacher, pero hindi siya ganoon kaimportante kumpara sa instruction. Kasi yun yung main role ng isang teacher. So a properly written task statement must contain an action, what is done, ano yung gagawin, and an object to which the action is done. So instruction, kanino? Sa estudyante. Psychometrician, nag-administer ng psychological test, kanino? Kung sa company ka, edi pwedeng sa mga applicant. Kung sa clinic, edi sa mga clients. So, there should be an action, ano yung kailangan gawin, at kung saan mo ito, ano yung object to which the action is done. Next, characteristics of a well-written task statements. One action should be done to one object, should be written at a level that can be read and understood, written in the same tense, should include the tools and equipment used to complete the task, should not represent a competency. So, hindi tayo naglalagay ng be a good encoder. So, nakalagay sa task mo is encoding lang. Kanino? Kanino ka or ano ang ine-encode mo? Encoding of files for the department, let's say. Pero you don't need to write adjectives or competencies being an encoder. Should not be a policy. Treats people nicely. So, hindi daw yun yung mga task statements. And then, the level of authority should be indicated if the task involves decision-making. This will allow the incumbent to know which decisions he or she is allowed to make on his or her own and which he or she needs approval for from a higher level. Of course, ito yung task mo, merong level, let's say, psychometrician. So, merong leveling, nakakapag-administer siya ng test, nakakapag-score, nakakapag-interpret, pero hindi ka pwedeng magbigay ng report not unless approved and evaluated by the psychologist. So, pwedeng nakalagay dun sa task statement that after this list of tasks, the product should be evaluated by the higher authority, which is who is the psychologist. And then, pwede nang i-release kung ano man yung product or output noong psychometrician. And then step 3, rate task statements. In here, the task statements have been written. So the next task is to analyze, rate it. So task analysis, subject matter experts rate each task statements on the frequency and importance of criticality of the task being performed, and the task that meets the acceptable rating will be included in the final task inventory. So nung una, yung incumbent, yung merong posisyon, yung may trabaho na yon ang nagsulat ng task. So this time, papasok na yung mga experts sa task analysis. Titingnan na niya, ito ay based sa perception noong empleyado. Sa akin kaya, dahil ito yung job na ina-analyze ko, ito daw yung mga tasks na kailangang i-accomplish along with that job. Being an expert, ito ba talaga ay important? Ito ay laging ginagawa? Ito ba ay final na part ng inventory or whatsoever? Ayan. Then step 4, determine essential KSAOS, knowledge, skill, ability, and other characteristics. What do you mean by knowledge? Of course, has something to do more on the cognitive ability. Ano? Kapag nagtrabaho, dapat may alam. May alam doon sa trabaho, pero hindi lang dapat matatapos doon. Dapat meron ding kakayahan, capability to perform the task, the skill. Meron ding ability, the capacity to learn more information, to acquire more knowledge, to develop the skills, and of course, the other characteristics. Dapat meron ding certain personality, interest, or motivation in order for you to finish the task. So dapat in the job analysis, we are very specific with the list of KSAOs needed to perform the tasks. A group of subject matter experts will brainstorm the characteristics needed to perform each task para talaga ma-ensure na ito talaga yung hinihingi na characteristics ng isang trabaho. And then once that they come up already with the final list of KSAOS, i-rate ulit, and then titingnan kung ano talaga yung pinaka-importante, and then yung mga kinakailangan pa para sa specific job or task, and then after that, makakapag-come up na nung final required characteristics of a person who wish to have that position of a particular position. Then step 5, selecting the tests to top KSAOS. Once the important characteristics have been identified, the next is to determine the best method to tap the characteristics needed at the time of hire. So ito yung mga sets of characteristics. Ano kaya yung mga tests? Psychological test na magme-measure nun. Kung sinabi mo na being a psychometrician, dapat ay knowledgeable in various psychological tests, standardized psychological test. Ano kaya yung particular test that will test that particular characteristic? This method will be used to select new employees and include such methods as interviews, work samples, ability tests, personality tests, integrity tests, and many more. So tests plays a vital role in our job analysis. So kailangan ay knowledgeable din ang isang HR personnel at ang isang staff in various psychological tests. Next, other job analysis methods. So though we discussed methods of job analysis, pwedeng mga time-consuming yon and expensive. So these are other job analysis methods that we have. methods providing general information about worker activities, methods providing information tools and equipment, methods providing information about the work environment, and methods providing information about competencies. So if you look at it, ito pa rin naman yung tinitingnan sa job analysis. Worker activities, tools and equipment required, work environment, and competencies. And then meron tayong mga methods na pwedeng gamitin. For worker activities, we have the position analysis questionnaire. It is a 194 items, which has 6 dimensions: information input, mental processes, work output, relationships with other persons, job context, and other job-related variables. Ang advantage daw nito, inexpensive and little time to use. Kasi questionnaire lang, ano? You can give directions and then sasagutan lang ng supervisor, incumbent, o ng expert yung questions na to determine or to analyze the job properly. However, the questions and directions are written at the college graduate level. Thus, many workers may not be able to understand it. That is why the developers recommend that trained lang yung analyst na gagamit doon sa position analysis questionnaire rather than isasama mo yung mga employees, rank and file employees. Let's say, for example, merong mga position sa company na hindi naman kailangang college graduate. Halimbawa, technician. Hindi appropriate itong PAQ para sa kanila kasi may mga words or terminologies na baka hindi nila maintindihan. So probably you can use other methods of job analysis. Another for worker activities, job structure profile. It is a revised version of PAQ designed to be used more by the job analyst than by job incumbent. And ang disadvantage, little lang research conducted nito since 1985. Job elements inventory, designed as an alternative to PAQ. It contains 153 items and requirement para matake ito ay at least 10th grade ang education. Functional job analysis, it is developed by FINE that could be used by the federal government to analyze and compare thousands of jobs. Rates the extent to which a job incumbent is involved with functions in the categories of data, people, and things. So nire-rate mo yung sarili mo kung how you function in a company, how you deal with your co-employees, and how you manage to use the tools and equipment necessary for a job. Unfortunately, we don't have this questionnaires, we don't have these tests available in the campus, but these are some of the short background description nitong mga methods or tests na pwede nating gamitin for job analysis. Another for work environment naman, we have the AET. I don't know how to pronounce it, but ito yung meaning niya, ARBE something. Or ergonomic job analysis procedure, 216 item test. It is a standardized questionnaire that analyzes a job along several dimensions. Though it looks like promising, wala daw masyadong published research about this. So baka gusto ninyong mag-publish ng research about or using ergonomic job analysis procedure. And then we also have the ONET, or the Occupational Information Network. It is used or created to replace the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, which had been used since the 1930s. And then it includes information about the occupation and the worker characteristics needed for success in the occupation. So this information can be used by employers to select new employees, aplikante na naghahanap ng trabaho, kung nagmamatch ba yung kanyang characteristics doon sa trabaho na gusto niyang applyan. So ito yung sample ng site or the site for the ONET. That's one means or method to gather information regarding the work environment, which can be used for job analysis. Another, for competencies naman, critical incident technique. It is developed by John Flanagan. Uses written reports of good and bad behavior. This is excellent kasi we can really identify the good and the bad behaviors of the employees who are performing the job. However, ay yung ang drawback nito is the difference of poor and excellent performance ignores routing duties. Siyempre, sa evaluation, lalo na kung ang nag-evaluate naman ay kakilala, kasi sa evaluation, soon we will discuss, pwede kang i-evaluate ng supervisor, peer, or ng self. Let's say, self and peer. So, syempre, since you have established relationship with yourself and with your peers, maganda yung evaluation mo. So, maglalagay ka ng bad behaviors but hindi gaano. Kasi self nga ang nagre-rate or peer ang nagre-rate. And let's say for example, you know the fact na yung rating o yung evaluation would mean something to your promotion, would mean something to your staying dun sa for your stay in the company. So kailangan mo talagang lakihan yung points o yung rating mo, good behaviors mo. Though maglalagay ka rin naman ng bad. Same goes with the supervisor good and bad behavior. So, ang nakikita lang ay yung mga na-observe. But how about yung mga little things na ginagawa noong empleyado na pwede ring maka-apekto doon sa pagpa-perform niya ng job or responsibilities related doon sa posisyon o sa trabaho niya. So, yun yung drawback ng critical incident technique. Yes, nakikita mo yung poor and bad behaviors ng isang empleyado as you evaluate, pero meron kang mga bagay na hindi nakikita or hindi na-analyze kasi hindi siya kasama doon sa report. Hindi siya kasama doon sa nakita o tinignan during the analysis. And then we have job components inventory for 100-item test. It provides information about the perceptual, physical, mathematical, and the like needed to perform the job. It also provides information about tools and equipment used on the job. So, inventory, chinecheckan kung ano-ano ba yung mga kailangan doon sa trabaho para ma-perform ng maayos, ano yung mga tools and equipment na kailangan, and then competent ba yung nagtatrabaho, nagamit niya ba ng ayos yung mga tools and equipment, nagawa niya ba yung itong particular task na to kasi ito yung required dun sa trabaho. Ayan. Another, threshold trait analysis, 33-item questionnaire that covers 5 trait categories: physical, mental, learned, motivational, and social. It is short, reliable, and can correctly identify important traits. However, it is not available commercially, and the main uses are in the development of employee selection program or a career plan since it focuses on the rates. So dito naman, for you to know whether the employee is competent enough for that particular job, maganda tignan mo nga yung mga traits niya, yung kanyang mga characteristics, essential characteristics na baka makatulong to perform the job. Then the Fleischmann Job Analysis Survey, it requires incumbents or job analysts to view a series of abilities and to rate the level of ability needed to perform the job. It is supported by years of research. Imagine 33 years of research. And its advantage, it is more detailed, commercially available, and can be completed online. Siguro, as part of your research then, you may try to search on this Fleischmann Job Analysis Survey. Tingnan natin kung ano yung content niya, and it can be used as means to provide us information about competencies. Another job adaptability inventory, 132 item test. It taps the extent to which a job incumbent needs to adapt to situations on the job. Merong 8 dimensions, so very situational. Kasi how the client or how the employee handle emergencies, work stress, how they solve the problem, makikita mo talaga kung competent yung tao doon sa particular task or job na, or sa particular task na required sa isang trabaho. And then the PPRF, Personality Related Position Requirements Form. It contains 107 items designed to identify personality types needed to perform the job. So it taps 12 personality dimensions that are under the big 5 personality dimensions. Maganda rin in determining the competencies of the person to look at the personality as the totality of the person, paano siya paano siya makisalamuha sa iba, extrovert ba siya, introvert, or how he or she decides, handle situations, etc. So this is actually a brief categorization of the methods and how they give us information, or what are the informations that they give us which are necessary for job analysis. So unfortunately, wala tayong mga to. Pero we can look at the ONET because it's available online. We can also look at the Fleischmann Job Analysis Survey and the like. Medyo parang masyadong foreign-based. Sana meron din tayo na magawa na tool to help experts perform job analysis. And then lastly, evaluation of job analysis methods. So out of all the methods, walang best na technique in analyzing the jobs. Mas maganda nga combination. Meron kang mga tests, and at the same time, you have interviews, you have job participation kung gusto mo, or you have observation with the incumbents or the employees who are performing the job. It is dependent, the best method is dependent to the end use of the information. And ayan, merong mga specifications kung ano yung methods na best. Let's say for employee selection and performance appraisal, the work-oriented methods are good. For writing job description, syempre yung job-oriented methods ang maganda. Get the most out of job analysis, several techniques should be used so that information on each of the job description sections can be obtained. Another, we have the survey research by Levine, Ash, and their colleagues. These are the comments on the job analysis methods that we had a while ago, but I will not further dwell on this. Just read them. This is the result of their research. And then we have job evaluation. This is the process of determining the monetary worth of a job. Of course, when you are performing a job, you are expecting something doon sa trabaho. And technically and basically, it's the monetary worth. Paano ba natin kinocompute yung salary or yung wage ng isang empleyado na naghahawak ng posisyon na yon? So there are 2 stages, determining the internal pay equity and external pay equity. When we talk about internal pay equity, this involves comparing the jobs within an organization. Internal, so ito yung trabaho, let's say psychometrician, and then psychologist. So you try to compare the jobs with the organization para makita mo kung ano ba yung tamang monetary worth ng isang position. Internal pay equity, equal ba yung binibigay ko kasi psychometrician siya at sa psychologist and all whatsoever. But the point of comparison is within the organization. If you are paying people accordingly doon sa organization. Steps in determining internal pay. Step 1, determining compensable job factors. Siyempre, ang ano bang binabayaran natin? May mga bagay tayong binabayaran. Gano'n niya kahirap ginagawa yung trabaho? Ano ba ang educational requirements? Ano ba ang demand, physical demands, mental demands ng trabaho na to? So, kailangan nating i-consider yon in determining the pay for a particular job. Working conditions, masyadong mainit. So, ano ba, meron ba siyang hazard pay or meron ba siyang additional pay because of the working conditions and all. So you have to look at the job factors. Second, determining the levels for each compensable factors. Madali ang level, halimbawa education. So iba-iba. Kapag master's graduate, iba pa ang bayad kumpara sa college graduate or high school graduate or whatsoever. For the responsibility, leveling of the responsibility, amount of time spent doon sa trabaho na yon. And then, yung iba ay part din ng trabaho pero little naman yung time na binibigay mo para doon sa trabaho na yon. So, how much is paid for that? Let's say, psychometrician. Yung scoring, administration, scoring, and interpretation, yun yung major role. So, yun talaga yung binabayaran sa'yo. Let's say, binabayaran ka for that 2,000 per hour, halimbawa. Basta isang oras kang administer score at isa-isa muna. Halimbawa ay nag-score ka or interpret ng test, naka-isang oras ka. So, babayaran ka ng 2,000. Pero the other responsibilities na, yes, you are doing as a psychometrician, but not that you consume much of your time, konti lang yung pay na binibigay para doon. And then, step 3, determining the factor weights. Some factors are more important than the others. So, you assigned parang level of importance doon sa factors kung paano mo siya babayaran. We have the wage trend line. This is a line that represents the ideal relationship between the number of points that a job has been assigned and the salary range for that job. Let's say, for example, ayan, ito yung mga factors: education, responsibility, physical demands. So kapag siya ay PhD graduate, 200 points. And then itong 200 points na to, meron siyang corresponding pay. Kasi ito yung level niya. Ito yung kanyang level of education. Halimbawa, responsibility, make decisions for other employees. Parang supervisor yung level. So, 150 yung points. Meron siyang corresponding na payment, etc. Ayan. And this is an example of a wage trend line. Imagine 100, 10,000, and whatsoever. So each levels corresponds to the actual pay that we give to the employees. And then if we have internal pay equity, we have external pay equity. Dito naman, we are comparing the worth of a job outside naman, external market. Let's say, for example, supervisor yung posisyon sa ibang company, magkano ang binabayad sa supervisor. Minsan nakakarinig tayo ng tatapatan ko yung binabayad sa iyo ng ibang company. So ibig sabihin check or nagtatry ng i-compare yung rate ng being supervisor sa company, isang company sa isa pang company. External pay equity. This is important to attract more employees, retain employees. Siyempre, kapag mas malaki yung kita sa kabilang company, baka maglipatan doon yung mga empleyado. Halimbawa ay police. Police sa Station 1 and Station 2. Mas malaki ang sahod o mas malaki ang sweldo sa Station 2, di lilipat yung mga police na nasa Station 1 sa Station 2. May possibility because of the comparison ng pay, worth noong trabaho. And it also helps for the company to be competitive with the compensation plan. Kaya bang isustain yung compensation na yon na ibinibigay sa empleyado? At kaya bang makipagsabayan sa ibang mga companies? Let's say McDo and Jollibee. Naging once in your life ba na conscious kayo kung sino ang mas malaking magpasahod? Jollibee or McDo? Tanungin ang mga workers. Bakit kaya ang daming nagtatrabaho, let's say, sa Jollibee compare sa McDo? Kunwari lang. O baka yon ang dahilan. Mas mataas yung sweldo doon sa Jollibee kesa McDo. So, if we want to determine the appropriate worth of the job, we have to compare the rates, the worth of the job in our company outside sa ibang company or organization. So how can we do that? Salary surveys, ayan, magtanong-tanong, or you can send questionnaire to see how much they are paying their employees, positions na related. Halimbawa, supervisor, magkano doon ng supervisor? Clerk, magkano doon ng clerk, etc. And then salary surveys also helps the organization to understand their market position. Ano yung market position? It is the position of a company in relation to the compensation policies of other organizations. Market position, gaano, aside from being competent, hindi ka ba nalalayo dun sa mga ibang companies na kalaban mo? Of course, there's competition between one company to the other, pero nakakalaban ka ba or nakaka-cope ka or nakakasabay ka doon sa ibang company in terms of not just the output or the product but also the payment, the pay, the salary of the employees. And lastly, comparable worth. This is the idea that jobs requiring the same level of skills and responsibility should be paid the same regardless of supply and demand. This is also known as pay equity. Siyempre, kung ikaw naman ay psychometrician, halimbawa, ang isang kasama mo ay psychometrician, pareho lang din naman kayo ng educational background, pareho kayo ng skills, pareho kayo ng responsibilities, as in pareho kayo. Nag-iba lang kayo sa pangalan at sa itsura. Merong same dapat yung inyong worth sa job. Dapat ay tama or pareho lang kayo ng pay, ng salary o ng wage. Kasi you have the same expectations, same characteristics that you have to perform a particular job. So that would be all for job analysis. I will stop the sharing. Any question and clarifications before we proceed with the next? Hello? Stop presenting. I will first stop the recording, but if you have questions, you may turn on your microphone and tell me the question. Or you are eating already because it's 12 o'clock. Sayang walang emotions dito ngayon sa ating Google Meet. Unlike sa Webex, makikita ko ang inyong mga reactions even if you're hiding. Any questions and clarifications regarding job analysis? Kung wala na, can I see the raising of your hands? Ayan. So they are waving. They are still with me inside the meeting room. Okay. So I will stop first the recording. And thank you. I will stop the recording.